The UN Security Council is planning to vote this week on a draft resolution that would urge the United Nations to explore the possibility of establishing a UN peacekeeping force in Central African Republic. The landlocked, mineral-rich Central African Republic has been embroiled in chaos since Northern Seleka rebels seized the capital Bangui and ousted President Francois Bozize in March. UN officials and rights groups say both sides may have committed war crimes. Last month, French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius warned the CAR risked becoming a new Somalia if it did not get immediate support. If adopted by the 50-nation Security Council, the resolution would call on UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon to submit a report within 30 days that would outline possible international support to a planned African Union peacekeeping mission to CAR known as MISCA. Islamic extremists have taken the offensive around Gao in northern Mali, wounding 2 civilians Tuesday when they blew up a bridge a day after shelling the town and injuring a soldier. This is the first sign of instability in Gao, which suffered numerous attacks before French-led military intervention moved free the area of terrorists earlier in the year. CCTV's Maria Galang with the story.
Another attack in northern Mali. Just a day after suspected Islamist militants hit Gao with artillery fire on Monday, early Tuesday, a bridge near Bentia, about 50 kilometers from the Niger border, is dynamited, leaving 2 civilians wounded. Gao was the first city freed from Islamist occupation by a French-led military intervention that drove al-Qaeda-linked fighters from the country's north earlier this year. While it bore the brunt of the guerrilla war waged by remnants of the defeated insurgents in the months following the January offensive, until Monday's violence, the area had not seen an attack since May. A spokesman for an al-Qaeda splinter group, the Movement for Oneness and Jihad in West Africa, Mujao, on Tuesday claimed responsibility for both attacks and warned of further operations in a message to AFP, saying, quote, "In the name of al-Mujahideen, we claim the attacks against the evildoers in Gao and the attack on the bridge that served to transport the enemies of Islam into the land of Islam. Attacks on the enemies of Islam will continue." Mali's Defense Minister Soumeylou Maïga has since denounced the attack, moving to reassure the population that troop deployment has been strengthened in the area. France keeps 3,000 troops in its former colony out of a contingent it dispatched last January to help end the Islamist occupation. But Paris plans to withdraw down the force to 1,000 men by the end of the year. Mali's new president, Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, promised to make security a top priority as the country battles the remnants of the Islamist militant groups. The militants had agreed to talks, but for now, it is yet to be known what the next move from either side will be. Maria Galang, CCTV.
Hundreds of migrants continue to arrive on Italian shores late on Monday evening, with several boats being identified close to the southern Sicilian coastline. A group of Iraqi, Afghan and Syrian migrants arrived on a Coast Guard boat at the port of Syracuse close to midnight. Meanwhile, another boat carrying a further 141 migrants believed to be of Syrian origin is also being escorted into shore and set to arrive on Wednesday. The arrivals come despite a shipwreck off the coast of Lampedusa on Thursday, in which at least 274 migrants died. As asylum seekers continue to flow into Europe undeterred by Thursday's tragedy, European Commission President José Manuel Barroso and Italian Prime Minister Enrico Letta are set to meet in Lampedusa. Local lawmakers, activists and even the island's mayor are pushing for policy changes to prevent shipwrecks, ensure refugee rights and improve conditions for the thousands who make the journey.
This terrible thing has happened. It's not just 20 or 30 people dead, it's 300 or 400. If you look at the Costa Concordia, there are about 5,000 people and 30 died. Here on this small ship, many more. It's a global tragedy.
Oh, you're watching Africa Live. Let's take a break. Coming up.
We know that Mr. al-Libi planned and helped to execute plots that killed hundreds of people, a whole lot of Americans, and we have strong evidence of that. and he will be brought to justice.
Defiant Obama defends U.S. action in Tripoli amid simmering diplomatic row with Libya. Libya has condemned the United States' weekend capture of a suspected al-Qaeda leader on Libyan territory. And as al-Libi, wanted over 1998 bombings of U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, was seized in Tripoli on Saturday. The Libyan Justice Minister described the arrest as unlawful kidnapping of a Libyan citizen. Meanwhile, Libyan Prime Minister Ali Zaidan has said ties between his country and the U.S. would not be affected by the issue. Susan Mungeli reports.
Libya on Monday summoned the U.S. ambassador to the country for questioning over the weekend capture of a suspected al-Qaeda leader on Libyan territory. Libya's justice minister said the abduction of al-Libi was considered kidnapping and was against the law in Libya. He said that while the abduction was illegal, al-Libi was now in U.S. custody and would be subject to its justice system.
We were surprised, in the sense that we did not expect it. We expected that we were being supported and that we need all the support to maintain stability in the country and to support the effort to improve security. But the news itself was definitely a surprise.
Guantanamo.
U.S. Special Forces captured Abu Anas al-Libi on Saturday. Al-Libi is alleged to be a senior al-Qaeda member and is wanted by the United States in connection to the bombing of American embassies in Tanzania and Kenya in 1998. Meanwhile, Libya's Prime Minister has said his country is keen on keeping good relations with the United States in the wake of the raid. Speaking to reporters in Rabat during a visit to Morocco, Ali Zaidan, however, insisted that Libyans have the right to be tried at home for any crimes.
The United States helped Libya very much during the revolution, and the relations should not be affected by an incident. We emphasize that Libyan citizens should be judged in Libya, and Libya does not surrender its sons.
Zaidan's comments were his first since the U.S. Special Forces conducted the raids in both Libya and Somalia. Susan Mungeli, CCTV.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Barack Obama has defended his decision to order commando raids in Libya and Somalia last weekend. Speaking at a news conference, Obama said the United States was justified in seizing Abu Anas al-Libi, saying the alleged top al-Qaeda operative was involved in plots that killed Americans and would be brought to justice. He also made clear that it likely would not be the last operation of its kind.
Africa is one of the places where because in some cases of the lack of capacity on the part of the governments, in some cases because it is easier for folks to hide out in vast terrains that are sparsely populated, that you're seeing some of these groups gather. And we're going to have to continue to go after them. But there's a difference between us going after terrorists who are plotting directly to do damage to the United States and us being involved in wars.
Well, let's discuss this further now. We're joined here in studio by Professor Macharia Munene, an international relations expert at the United States International University here in Nairobi. Professor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So let's look at this issue further. First, there was the killing of Osama in Pakistan. The Pakistani government claimed it was not aware of such a raid. Then we have Libya and what happened over the weekend in Somalia. Is the U.S. justified in making such incursions in various countries in pursuit of what they call terrorism suspects?
Well, it depends on what you are looking at. Legalistically, that's too narrow. But the issue here is national interest as perceived by the U.S. And when you're pursuing national interest, what we have now is power politics, international power politics. And the powerful countries have what may be called the prerogative of the mighty. And if you have the might, you can do what you want. And in this case, the U.S. was simply pursuing its interests as it perceives them by doing what it did, exercising the prerogative of the mighty.
But in so doing, it has been accused of sometimes not respecting the sovereignty of some states.
Yeah.
Do these allegations hold any water? I mean, situations
Yes,
reversed, how would it?
No, they make sense. But the U.S. has a habit of exempting itself from international law. It's not the first time it does that. In addition, there are some countries that it does not consider to be properly sovereign. And if they are not properly sovereign, then there is no sovereignty to violate.
But what do you mean by properly sovereign?
Some countries are described as half-baked sovereign. They don't control their own countries. They do not run their own resources, their own politics, their own economy. They depend on others to do everything. So they really have, because sovereignty implies you have capacity to be independent, to do your own things and defend yourself. And they do not have it. So if you do not have sovereignty, there's nothing to violate in the first place. And when the U.S. considers some countries as not being sovereign, then there's no violation. It has not broken any law, as far as it's concerned.
Libya's justice minister, however, is calling this incident an unlawful kidnapping of a Libyan citizen.
Yes.
How is this incident likely to impact U.S.-Libya relations?
Of course, there will be some tensions. But don't forget that the government in Libya today was in itself put there with the help of the West. And I think there are internal disputes, because there are some people, some officials in Libya, who don't think that there should be any repercussions, the tension in it. So there is more likely to be a problem within Libya than with the U.S., given the divisions with it. And to add to the other question you were asking about, what would happen if it was the U.S.
Right.
that had been, this had happened? It would consider it to be an act of war, an invasion. And the expected repercussions is it will send its jets to whoever supposedly did it and do that. So that's the kind of thing. It's a power politics thing here. And in Libya, those in Libya in power are really not in power, because they are controlled from somewhere else.
All right. So let's look then at the war on terrorism largely, especially from when Osama bin Laden was killed. There have been several other top Al-Qaeda leaders that have also been killed. And this has sent the perception that perhaps Al-Qaeda has become weakened. And then, of course, we are seeing now sort of a resurgence. What exactly is going on?
Well, you see, terrorism is a mental thing before it is translated into material and territorial destructions. And the killing of Osama and a few people may have disoriented the network, but did not destroy it. So that disorientation still needed time. There was time for it to recover and reorganize. And what we have now is terrorism operating at a higher level, and which behoves now those dealing with them to also move their scale a little bit higher so that they can deal with it. The challenges that were posed by terrorism were not eliminated by the killing of Osama. And that's what's going on. So it tends to mutate. And these mutations can be very problematic. And as we are seeing there, that's what it is. And what President Obama did was to respond and appear to be responding to something that had happened, because it clearly had happened. And the president or the government must be seen to do something.
Right.
So he was doing something, and it's good for public relations.
All right, let's leave it there for now. Professor, thank you for joining us. We had here in studio Professor Macharia Munene, international relations expert, the United States International University here in Nairobi. Guinea's president has dismissed accusations of electoral fraud lodged by the opposition. The opposition made the allegations of fraud in polls held on September 28th amid calls for the vote to be scrapped. According to partial and provisional results released 10 days after the vote, Conde's ruling rally of the Guinean People Party is in the lead. Conde, elected president in 2010, said attempts to destabilize the country would not succeed and that the opposition should take any complaints it has with last month's polls to the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, Malgases are getting ready for much-delayed general elections to be held on October 25th as political tensions in Madagascar rise. An electoral court disqualified Andry Rajoelina, Lalau Rakatoniraini, wife to Rajoelina's exiled rival Marc Ravalomanana, and former President Didier Ratsiraka and 5 others because they did not meet electoral rules. The 3 frontrunners had vehemently refused to step aside despite regional and international calls for them to do so. The vote is widely expected to end a deep-seated political crisis prompted by a coup 4 years ago, which has taken a toll on Madagascar's tourism industry. And in North Africa, Egypt's interim president, Adli Mansour, has visited Jordan for talks focusing on bilateral and regional issues on his first international trip. Mansour was traveling from Saudi Arabia, where he met leaders in an official trip that highlighted a regional realignment spurred by the military ouster of the Muslim Brotherhood from power in Cairo. More than 2,000 Brotherhood members have been arrested in Egypt, most accused of inciting or taking part in violence. Emboldened by Egypt's fierce crackdown of the Brotherhood, several Arab Gulf states have also stepped up their clampdown of suspected Brotherhood members and Islamists, whom they see as a threat to the Gulf's tightly run fraternity of monarchs, sheikhs and emirs. Well, let's now give you what's coming up in Biz Africa.